Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Wall, Managing Partner here at CPA4IT. I just wanted to record this short video introducing you to our latest and greatest version of our Capturing Revenue and Expense Data manual, also referred to as the CRED manual. As many of you know, we haven't updated our CRED manual in several years, so this marks a fairly significant departure from past models. And we've done our best to make this as simple and easy to use as possible, while allowing for greater flexibility, including additional bank accounts and credit cards. As many of you know who used the previous version of the CRED, if you were using that version, you had to have multiple versions for each bank account and each credit card that you had. Our new version will allow for up to 4 either bank accounts or credit cards, along with your director's advances or director paid expense transactions. So let me walk you through our spreadsheet and let you know how you're going to use it to enable you to do your bookkeeping using Excel. So we have a couple of spreadsheets. The first spreadsheet is called your dashboard, and is where you should start. The very first thing that you need to do is enter your year-end information, which includes the first day of your fiscal year-end. So if your year-end in this case is August 31st, 2024, then your start date would be the 1st of September, 2023. We'll have some default rates in here for GST, which here in Ontario is 13% GST, HST. And we do ask you to select the method that you're using, which is either the quick method or the long method. This is your very first year. The default method is usually the long method unless you elect for the quick method. We do usually recommend the quick method for most service-based businesses, but that's probably a topic for another day. If you were curious as to whether you should be on the quick or the long, and you are new, I highly recommend booking an initial consultation with your account manager and making sure that that gets set up as quickly as possible. Next, we do ask you to provide us a home office percentage of use calculation so that we can use that on the home office worksheet. You now no longer need to enter all your details on the home office worksheet itself. All the information will flow through from the individual registers, including the director's advance and your various bank and credit card accounts, and it will take the percentage of use that you put in here. The average for most people is between 20 to 25%. Another quick tip for new clients is when we look at your home office, we have a very unique calculation that we use to calculate your home office. You can choose to use either the number of rooms or the square footage. We recommend using square footage because it can usually bump you up quite a bit. And in our square footage calculation, what we would take as the numerator is the office space itself, plus the garage if you are using it to park a vehicle that's used for work. For the denominator, we'll take the total square footage, including the garage, because we've used that in the numerator, but we'll subtract from the denominator the common areas, which are the kitchens, the hallways, and the bathrooms. And that will take the average person to about 25%. If you do have a vehicle, the new worksheet does account for up to 2 vehicles. We do ask you to complete the automobile worksheet here as well on the dashboard, which this is a nice little drop down to know if it's owned personally or by the corporation. We also need to know if it's an electric vehicle, the number of kilometers that are used for work. So this is the actual mileage that you are driving for business purposes and the total kilometers. We will then take the percentage of use and compare a percentage of the actual expenses against the mileage method and take the largest of the two. Now, if you did purchase a vehicle, we ask that you give us the cost of the purchase, including the HST and the total cost and the date that you purchased the vehicle. We'll use this to calculate the amortization. If you were leasing the vehicle, on the other hand, then you would use the lease down payment amount and the lease start date and the lease end date. And then the individual lease amount should come after your transactions on your individual bank or credit card statements. So once all that information is entered, we proceed on to your various accounts. Now, we've set up some defaults here, including Director's Advance, Bank 1, Bank 2, Credit Card 1, Credit Card 2. These can all be used interchangeably. You can rename these if you have, for example, 4 credit cards and no bank account, which actually wouldn't be possible, 4 bank accounts and no credit cards, or 3 bank accounts and 1 credit card. You can rename these. The one caveat I would say is that if you change the name under the account name, the description on the tab will change here. However, the description down here on this tab won't change. You can manually just right click that and rename it if you do choose to rename these on your dashboard. We do ask you to provide an account number. This account number, this is for internal purposes. You don't need to worry about this. This is just so that we can map this to your chart of accounts, but you don't need to worry about that here. This is just where you'd put your last 4 digits of your bank account number, which will be helpful for us. We also do require the opening balance on the first day of your fiscal year end. If you're a brand new client, that balance will be 0. For your Director's Advance, again, that would be 0. For a credit card, it might be a negative balance, which would be the amount that was due at the close of your fiscal year end. That's important for reconciliation so that we can make sure that the opening balance plus the transactions equals the closing balance. Once you've entered all this information, then you're on to your sales and receivables. Here you will enter all the sales and receivables from your fiscal year end, including any accounts receivable that you might have had from the prior year that were received this year. What will happen is it's important to put an invoice number, and you'll see when we go to the Director's Advance or the Banking tab, we do have an invoice number, and you'll put in that invoice number for the corresponding invoice, and that will then match up to the appropriate invoice here to mark that as received, and your accounts receivable will be updated accordingly. Now, what you will see on your dashboard is your Director's Advance, the total of the Director's Advance, the total invoiced amount during the year, your sundry income if you're on the quick method, the total amount that's been received from your customers, and the accounts receivable at the end of the year, as well as your total expenses. And if you're on the long method, the GST collected and the GST paid on expenses. So we will present that all to you on your dashboard. And of course, if you have any notes for your accounting team, you can enter those in here to make that a little bit easier. As I said, when you're entering in your banking information, you can copy and paste information from CSVs. You're just going to have to do it sort of one column at a time. You can go up to column C without any problems, but the amount you'll see there are some hidden cells here, so it can get a little bit confusing for the system. So if you have the date and the description and then the amount, you'd have to copy those sort of one column at a time and paste them in here. The date format is important, and the date format is day-day-mon-YY, or day-day-month, the short version of the month, dash the short version of the year. Then you can have a description. This isn't your memo or your note. This is probably the description that would come most likely off your bank transaction, or if it's a director paid expense, and what the item was for. And then you're going to have a chart of account. You will select this from here. This is a drop-down menu. If you cannot find anything that relates to your chart of accounts, there is a chart of accounts worksheet at the end, which you can add to. Keep in mind, any chart of account you add will not be in our standard chart of accounts, and will mean that that account will not be benchmarked when we do your year end. So I would encourage you to use our standard chart of accounts where you can. And that's just, you're going to select that from a drop-down list there. Then your money in, money out. So if you're receiving money, like an invoice from your bank account, that will have no brackets. But if you're spending money, that should have brackets to denote that that is money out. And then again, if you have an invoice, you would put an invoice number here. Um, and the system is smart enough to recognize when we do have um, multiple transactions to pay for one invoice. I'm going to see if we've got, here we are. So we can see in this case, we've got um, one invoice here for $1,500. It's been put to accounts receivable. So you will always put your invoices against accounts receivable, not against contract income, as far as your bank statements and credit card statements. So the invoices themselves, the revenue, will be reported from the sales and accounts receivable. This is what will determine your revenue. And then we'll be using the bank transactions to try and match these various invoices against these sales and receivables. So for example, we can see that this is invoice 101, and it's going to be able to match one payment in here from invoice number 101. So that will line up in our accounts receivable so that we know that there's only one outstanding, or there's more outstanding on that invoice, but not the total amount. So again, um, the net invoice here, the total invoice is 4,600. See here. That's the net of HST. Payment amount, total received. So in this case, we've received 5,200. So there must be on another transaction here. Yeah, so we've got 1,550 there and another 1,000 there. So if I take this invoice number out and I go back to my sales and receivable, you can see there's still $1,000 outstanding on that invoice. So it's able to match it up from multiple tabs and multiple payments. If it was one invoice amount, so for example, if I go back to this invoice amount and I change this, instead of 1,200, 2,200, you can see there's now zero amount owing on this. So it's using that invoice column to match that against individual invoices, and it can match against whether that be, let's call this maybe now director's advance. Um, and that's going to now match based on the invoice number from all of the different credit card or bank accounts or director's advance transaction. Now, unlikely that you would receive this in a credit card, but again, we built this around the mentality that we wanted to have flexibility and that you could use what we're currently labeling as credit cards as additional bank accounts, or what we're currently labeling as bank accounts as credit cards. These will all work for us, and we'll be able to put this information in relatively straightforward and match them against your bank accounts, as long as you complete all the information correctly on your dashboard, so we know what account number we need to match to. Now, we don't need your full account number here for the banks and credit cards, just the last 4 digits to be able to match them. And that should be sufficient. So that is basically everything in its nutshell. Hopefully this will provide you a better user interface for the CRED manual. We are effectively beta testing this right now. We are already looking to do a version 2. One of the things I talked to about the team is I want to change around the layout so that we can copy and paste from bank CSVs to make your job a little bit easier, because I know many of you do that. So in version 2, we will be looking to add that. Unfortunately, right now for version 1, you'll just have to, if you do want to paste information from, let's say, a list of spreadsheets, you'd have to come in here and paste one column at a time, and then come in here and paste the next column. And of course, make sure your date format does match the correct date format, because that's not going to work. You can see it's already given me an error. I can select my chart of accounts. And in this case, again, so we've got money going out here. So money going out. Doesn't want to paste. Again, like I said, hoping that we resolve this in V2. I think what, if I could be mistaken, I think what I'm going to have to do is highlight 4 rows. There we go. That was my problem. And then I'd have to go back in here and mark these as negative amounts. Now, what I would likely do if it were me and I was doing this in reality with the current version and I was looking to copy and paste information from a bank export, so then you would just put in my last amount, which is the 4,000, and just making up this information. What I would want to do here as well is select my standard chart of accounts, whatever that might be. I'm just going to make this up. This would actually be computer supplies. Why I can't find computer supplies. And select the appropriate account. And this would be a payment. So this would probably come from easiest thing to do on payments, if you do have a question. If it's going out from one account and into another account, I just put them both to director's advance. They will wash themselves out. It's the easiest way to handle it. And then this would be director's advance. And lastly, let's call this professional fees. I can find that. There we go. And that would be that. Again, I would like to make this process a little bit easier for you. So we'll be looking at modifying this to match a little bit more of what a CSV might look like in the way of an export from a bank. This is a sample CSV that's provided by TD. So we'll be looking to see if we can modify that in version 2. So unfortunately, in version 1, there does require a little bit of entering. We can add memos in here as well, whatever the case might be. Payment from CIBC, whatever you'd like to add. And again, you're going to see some nice information at the top of the screen, which tells you the total inflows and the total outflows and the closing balance. Obviously, we'll be using this to make sure that the bank reconciles to the final balance. And it is important that your opening balance plus your transaction equal your closing balance. Otherwise, your bank does not reconcile. With your director's advance, there's no opening balance. There's the closing balance is the total of the transactions. And again, that's pretty much everything for now. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. Thank you, and bye for now.